So I'm going to be talking about how Keir Starmer's Labour Party seemed to be replicating the strategy employed by Tony Blair and New Labour in the mid-90s. And this is the sort of flank from the right, present themselves as conservatives strategy. So before we begin, I would really encourage viewers to go and watch this segment from December, where Carl and Martin Daubney go through some of the plans that Labour have for us as laid out in their manifesto, because it is seriously radical stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. And people think that Starmer's a really boring idiot. And he is a really boring idiot, so they're not wrong. But he also has an insanely radical manifesto. They don't realize it because it's stuff that they've heard from America or France. They don't realize the damage that would do to Britain because we're not a social contract society.
No. And see, I find it interesting you've picked up on the fact that Starmer is boring there, because he absolutely is. I mean, we're actually going to watch a few clips of him during this. So I'm afraid I'm going to subject you to his droning, sort of school deputy head voice. But that sort of boring quality that he has, I think that's actually probably part of the strategy, right? Because the sort of flavour of the Labour that we're getting now is very different. As much as they're replicating the strategy of Tony Blair's New Labour, it has a different flavour to that, because it feels a lot more. I mean, for one thing, Tony Blair was a young guy. A lot of it was about, it was things can only get better, energy, excitement, and so on.
There was also a kind of, I'm old enough to remember, there was a kind of cultural zeitgeist of cool Britannia at the time.
Absolutely. Well, he was
tapping
hanging around with Oasis and all this sort of thing.
Exactly.
Right?
And Blur,
But this kind of incarnation of Labour that we're seeing emerging now, it does have a different flavour to it than Blair's Labour, because it is a lot more dry and managerial. Yeah,
it's kind of a post-apocalyptic flavour.
Yeah, it is. It's the end of the revolution as opposed to the start.
We're literally living in the ruins of Britain.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer's like, so we're going to finish the job. So.
The ashes of civilization, as they say.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, before we go on, I do just want to go through just a couple of the things that are mentioned in this manifesto. John, if you wouldn't mind just going to the Labour one first. But just to remind viewers of what it is that they are actually offering us here. Now, first of all, I just want to say, this graphic on the front of the...
Yeah, look at that.
I mean, that's literally Britain as a geometric society.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a great point.
Rolling in his grave.
Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate it. It's
horrible.
the least aesthetic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. So
the manager's view of Britain.
Exactly.
Oh, God, no.
So just very briefly. So on page 67, Labour tell us that they are seeking to transform our country, seeking to turn us from essentially a traditional nation into a propositional nation, a kind of, as you say, a social contract society. On page 11, we have the abolition of the undemocratic House of Lords to be replaced by a second elected chamber. And obviously this is a policy shared by several parties like Reform UK, who are nominally the largest dissident right-wing party in the country, although their local election numbers obviously don't bode too well. No. But something like reforming the House of Lords is so far down my list of priorities, especially when the reason given is better. The reason given is better quality of government. And to me, expanding the quantity of government is the last thing you would do to yield that end. Because what that does, I mean, that kind of, in my opinion, that gives sort of these sort of emboldened managerial busybodies just more opportunities to fiddle about with the machinery of the state and expand their remit.
Yeah, one of the things that people fail to understand with the House of Lords is not only is it useful to have a repository of people who don't have to worry about democracy, right?
Getting re-elected.
Exactly. Yeah. Every 5 years that is not their issue. They also don't get to tamper very much. They don't get to do anything to my life. They literally can't do anything to my life. So fine.
Yeah. And beyond that, do you know what? From an aesthetic point of view, I like that we have a House of Lords.
Me too, man.
Yeah, I think it's
an
great.
Ancient institution, and I'm not a fan of upending ancient things for fashionable continental ideas.
Yeah. And the carpet in there is red because they are important and regal, not green.
But also the whole thing looks amazing. It looks like out of Harry Potter,
Absolutely.
And that's good. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it must be replaced by a rationally ordered, democratic, representative chamber.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I don't know why we can't actually argue from the perspective of aesthetics, right? Like Scrutonian, look, beauty matters, and how we feel about
how we feel about the thing.
Exactly.
That's right,
and I feel that there should be a House of Lords.
Yeah,
I just feel that way.
Yeah.
Not even going to justify myself. Yeah, exactly. It's enough. I'm not going to justify myself.
So just very quickly moving on. So page 46, we have an equalisation of legacy, what we might call legacy British identities, so English, Welsh, Scottish and Irish.
Equalisation of these,
Yeah, yeah. With nouveau British identities, and the document lists British, Jamaican, Pakistani, Indian, Turkish and Cypriot as examples, arguing that British identity is civic in nature, which is actually a position I could be won over to. Because at this point, I do think British is to the United Kingdom as American is to the United States. Purely, essentially a bureaucratic identity. Which, as it happens, is why I consider myself, like you, first and foremost, an Englishman. Because that's far more difficult to peel away from the sort of spiritual and maybe ethnic roots.
Yeah, well, it is an ethnic identity.
Yeah. And the document finally only contains 3 mentions of the word immigration, despite listing data on page 48 that indicates that lowering immigration is one of the highest priorities for both England and Wales. Now, it says it's the 8th highest priority for these places. I would imagine it's probably higher than that. That's just going off speculation.
Well, the Lord Ashcroft polls indicated that it was people's second highest priority in Brexit.
Well, there we go. And yet the document only lists that word 3 times, not giving any actual substance on what Labour are going to do about it.
Right.
Nevertheless, let's move on. We've also got Keir Starmer. So if you just want to open, we're just going to watch this. Keir Starmer talking about how he thinks that settled EU citizens should be allowed to vote in the UK.
If someone has been here, say, 10, 20, 30 years, contributing to this economy, part of our community, they ought to be able to vote. Let me bring it alive. I've obviously knocked on a lot of doors in the last few years, and you go to doors sometimes in general election and you're met with someone who says, look, I'm an EU citizen. I've been living here for 30 years. I'm married to a Brit. My kids were raised and brought up here. They're now working in the UK. I'm even working in lots of community projects, etc. But I can't vote. And I think that feels wrong and something ought to be done about. When someone has, let's just take someone who's been here for 30 years, has literally put down their roots here, as I say, married to a Brit, their kids are here. This is their country, this is where they live, this is where they contribute. I think it's very hard to say, well, you should really be voting back in your country of origin where you haven't been living for 30 years. That actually just doesn't pass the common sense test for me.
Keir, they do vote in their own countries.
Yeah.
They're citizens of their own countries.
Yeah. I think we should just first of all make sure viewers are still awake first. So,
but no, Keir, I just feel that you're wrong. So no, I hate it.
It just again, if we want to speak about how we feel about our country, this is totally wrong. Feels
extending
totally
the franchise
wrong
to foreigners, I don't agree with. British citizens only.
Yeah, and on extending the franchise, Keir Starmer also, he said this is not official policy, but he's spoken before about how he wants to lower the age of voting to 16 years old.
Yeah.
Which is just an amazing idea.
Raise it to 25.
Yeah, raise it further.
35.
Abolish it altogether.
But I mean, if we're going to stay within the frame of democracy, maybe about 40, then we'll have the country we want. Trust me.
I mean, speaking as somebody who's 21 years old, I can't help but agree with you, right? But no, I mean, as Count Dankula says, it's funny how a leftist party needs to admit they need to import and bribe voters from overseas or allow impressionable and completely politically illiterate 16-year-olds to vote to have any chance of winning.
Totally true. Totally true. Like, what's your constituency, Keir? Why isn't it the majority of the British public?
Yeah.
Like, why is it literally aliens and children?
Aliens and children,
like,
indeed.
why is that? Anyway.
Yeah. So I just want to encourage viewers to keep these policies and these talking points in mind as we sort of move through the discussion, okay? So I want to turn to Labour's emerging strategy now. So I want to start by just comparing some of Labour's social media posts. So I want to show you this one first. This was Labour's St George's Day post in 2021, right? So John, if we could just watch this.
During this pandemic, we've seen the huge sacrifice made by those on the front line across England, from Devon to Darlington. You've worked together to get us through.
This pandemic has shown just how vital and important our key workers are. So this St George's Day, we're saying thank you to everyone who has kept us all fed and kept us all going during the pandemic.
This year, across the country, we've all seen just how amazing our frontline staff are. You've made us all so proud. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
This St George's Day, I want to thank the extraordinary work of our NHS and frontline workers for all you've done and continue to do to keep us safe. Right across England, our key workers have stepped up. And this service and commitment means that there is now light at the end of the tunnel. On behalf of the Labour Party,
we can leave that there, John. That's
I
fine.
want...
Now, did you notice anything missing from that?
Well, I didn't see a single English flag.
One mention of England, no images of the St George's Cross.
No.
Instead, we have a celebration of NHS staff, which, to be fair, is not entirely improper, right? Using a national holiday that, like St George's Day, to celebrate people that we value and that we care about. But when it's done in place of any semblance of, celebration of our nation and our people, then it comes across as extremely cynical to me.
No, it's just Labour's stock talking points. And we're doing this on St George's Day. Well, you do it every other day as well. Yeah. So it's not special or interesting or patriotic.
Yeah, it's just a dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very diverse as well.
I agree.
So now I just want to compare this to the 2023 post that Labour put out for St George's Day. Now, I'm not the first person to cover this, of course, but here we have full frontal flag shagging.
Yes.
Right?
Finally.
Well, indeed, yeah. But I mean, just look at the difference in tone compared to the one just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a really, really powerful thing, because it might seem like a strange place to start looking at just, what amounts to social media posts and pictures. But imagery is important and symbolism is powerful. And so something like this, the message that this sends compared to the message that the 2021 post sends, it's worlds apart.
Yeah. Yeah, so some Tony Blair Institute political strategist has definitely sat down with them and go, no, on St George's Day, you put an England flag.
Yes.
Otherwise, the people in England will not think you're one of them.
Absolutely. So if we could just move on to the next link, John. So here are just some more imagery that they've put out, more flag shagging, right? And they used this graphic every single time they won a council seat.
Well, this was it the, I can't remember if there was a 2021 or 2022 Labour conference. I think it's the 2022 Labour conference where they had a giant Union Jack in the background, right?
Yes.
And all it was Corbynistas going, oh my God, this is like a Nazi rally.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's how far gone the Corbynistas are.
I just briefly want to say as well, just as an aside, this graphic here, I think this could be used, this could be any British party.
Yeah.
This could be Reform, this could be Tories. I think it just speaks to the aesthetic deadness of our politics.
Yeah.
Where it's all this managerial minimalism.
Yeah, well, that was, I was going to say, like, I hate the sort of abstract nature of it.
Yeah.
Like the broken lines in it. GB News suffered from this as well.
Yeah,
they had that
agree.
kind of abstract minimalism aesthetic, and it's like, no, make yourselves look like you're in a country house, please, like a country estate.
I totally
That's
agree.
what people wanted.
Traditional.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
and
horrible and modern like this.
yeah, exactly. This kind of gross modernism, but you are right. It could be any party.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It could be any party.
Yeah. So next, I just want to have a look at another post that the Tories have put out. So it's the end of this post. There's a little animation that John, if you could just play that for us. I just want to show this to viewers.
I mean, it's an accurate representation of the Conservatives.
Well, it is. I actually really like this, right? I think it's spot on. But the criticism that this animation is levelling is a very interesting one. I think what Labour are actually saying here is the Conservatives have failed to nurture and protect the tree of Britain, if you want. Instead, they've abused it and neglected it and let it die. Yeah. And that's a very, very interesting thing coming from Keir Starmer's Labour, who, as we know, have intentions to transform the country.
But you planted the poison seeds?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Your seed. Anyway, yeah.
But this, again, I just find it really interesting that the criticism that's being levelled here is the Conservatives have failed in their duty as Conservatives.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer actually said that, didn't
he? Well, he did. And that's actually what we're going to go on to next. Yeah. So we're going to have a look at this.
Labour are the real Conservatives. Oh, God.
So this was a day after that post was put out. This is what the Eye reported, that Labour are going to claim that they are the real Conservatives and they're going to protect our way of life. And Keir Starmer gave a speech at the Progressive Britain conference. And
promising to change his party's DNA like Tony Blair on steroids.
Tony Blair on steroids. As if that's not what we've had for the last 13 years.
Well, that's the point, though. That's what he's saying. It's like, no, look, you Conservatives, you're not doing Blairism properly.
Yeah.
Right? Because Cameron was explicit that he was essentially bringing in Blairism. And, of course, that makes the Conservatives the arbiters of the Blair project. And Keir Starmer is not wrong where he's like, no, you're screwing this up. Because the Conservatives are like, well, we don't feel like we should be doing this, but we have to do this. And so they've got no positive confidence. They can't say it with their chests, right?
No, absolutely.
But Keir Starmer, what he's doing now is saying, right, so Blairism is what conservatism is in this country.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I hate everything about this.
A quote from the speech is, he says, this is about taking our party back to where we belong and where we should have always been. And I think that speaks to the whole this sort of the attitude you're talking about, where it is the proper way of doing politics in this country. The only way we do politics is in this country.
Tony
is
Blair's way of
Blairist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So we're going to watch just a few clips of this speech just to get a flavour of the type of messaging that Labour are going with here. So if we could just watch this first one.
That if work doesn't pay, if living standards are falling, bills are rising, holidays start to feel out of reach, family life does feel more fragile. That when you look out of your window and see your community changing, high streets boarded up, fly tipping, antisocial behaviour, drugs and crime, that does gnaw away at your confidence in the future. That if you see an economy that hoards power and potential, where the South East creates the wealth and the only answer that's offered is redistribution, that doesn't treat our communities with the dignity or respect that they deserve. And most of all, that patriotism is about putting the country first, about serving your country, not just parading its symbols like the Tories do, but that working people do need to see your commitment to service, not some kind of patronising contempt for those who fly our flag.
I mean, just listen to that language. Right? That is not the language of a leftist.
No, that's the language that the Conservatives should have been using.
Yeah. I mean, do you find anything in that to be particularly disagreeable?
No.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not getting sucked into the Blairite, not looking into the eye of some.
It's a very cunning trick.
It really is. But seriously, this language, family life, community, dignity, respect, patriotism, our flag.
The way that things are changing, and it's like, and then he speaks to boarded up town centres. That's one of the problems. But things are changing in much more dramatic ways that you can't talk about.
Deeply Burkean, though, I thought. Thick language, as you would call it.
It's definitely what he's appealing to. Yeah. It's a lie, it's a trick, but he's definitely appealing to that.
Yeah, for sure. So just we're going to watch this next clip where he really drives this point home.
But to be honest, I don't think the language of stability comes naturally to progressive politics. I think too often we dismiss it as conservative,
obviously,
as a barrier to change. Now, don't mistake me, the very best of progressive politics is found in our determination to push Britain forward, a hunger, an ambition, that we can seize the opportunities of tomorrow and make them work for working people. But this ambition must never become unmoored from working people's need for stability, for order, for security. We must understand that there are precious things in our way of life, in our environment, in our communities, that it's our responsibility to protect and preserve, to pass on to future generations. And look, if that sounds conservative, then let me tell you, I don't care. Somebody has got to stand up for the things that make this country great. And it isn't going to be the Tories. That, in the end, is one of the great failures of the last 13 years. A Tory party that, in generations past, saw itself as the protector of the nation and the union, has undermined both, has taken an axe to the security of family life, trashed Britain's reputation abroad, has totally lost touch with the ordinary hope of working people. The Conservative Party can no longer claim to be conservative. It conserves nothing of value. Not our rivers or seas, not our NHS or BBC, not our families, not our nation. But the lesson for progressives must be that if a tide of change threatens to sweep away the stability working people need, we have to be in there, fighting for security just as fervently as we fight against injustice.
Now, first of all, I want to apologise for subjecting you to so much Keir Starmer.
No. I just feel like I'm being massively gaslit.
Yes. I mean, again, what
he literally has progressive Britain. Yes. We are the party of change.
Yes.
And he's saying the Conservatives have not conserved, and therefore, essentially what he's saying is the Conservatives have a duty to stop us from doing the things we want to do.
Yeah.
And they've not done it. And so now we have to stop us from doing the things we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because they went ahead and bloody did them.
Yeah.
Like, that's mad.
It's just hilarious.
Oh, God, the politics in this country are just insufferable.
But again, do you find anything in there to be particularly disagreeable? I mean, again,
apart from the fact that he's literally saying, look, we can't help ruining everything, and you were meant to restrain us, and you didn't. Like, apart from
you did more than us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And now we've got to hold you back. Apart from the massive gaslighting of all of this, no, the actual substance of it, of course I agree with, because it's a conservative message.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, our this, our that, town, community and family, respect, stability, order, security, and a responsibility to protect and preserve. These are words that should be coming out of the mouths of every conservative politician in this country.
Not Michael Gove, though.
Well, indeed.
Didn't come out of Michael Gove's mouth, did they?
No.
Diversity came out of Michael Gove's mouth.
Well, indeed. But it is, I mean, it's just amazing that this is what the Labour Party are sort of transitioning into. Now, as you say, it is a enormous gaslighting operation, but I think it will work.
Oh, yeah. And the Conservatives are so weak, so deserving of a kicking at this point. I mean, even Keir Starmer can't screw this up.
No. And we've just been subjected to 2 minutes of him, and it felt like a lifetime.
It did, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got one more clip of this speech to show you, and then we'll move on. And I think this clip really reveals, reveals what's underneath all of this gaslighting.
Right.
Okay. So, John, if we could have that next one, please.
Alongside dynamic government, you need that sense of collective purpose. It's essential for our 5 missions, for everything we want to achieve in government. It's how we make our streets safe, tear down barriers to opportunity, become a clean energy superpower, build an NHS fit for the future, and push our country forward to the highest sustained growth in the G7. And not just any old growth that truly serves working people, that understands the need for stability, raises living standards everywhere, comes from the grassroots, focuses on productivity in every community, not just redistribution. Sees secure, well-paid jobs as the litmus test of our politics, and puts communities in charge of their own destiny. A new course, a break not just from Labour arguments of the past, but also from the traditional Westminster model. This is what I mean by mission-led government. And it's why I'm not afraid to use the language of take back control. There's no hope in these times for a stand-aside state.
Now, full-on managerialism.
I was going to say, this is just full-on managerialism. Anybody who's read their Oakshot will recognise that what Keir Starmer is talking about here is the enterprise state, the state that has a teleology, right? And, there's some of this language, like, a collective mission, all that sort of thing. That's good. That's quite Carlylean,
But then he gets into productivity.
Yes.
And it's all about
growth.
GDP and growth.
GDP
exactly.
and so on. But it is, again, I'm not going to sit here and call Keir Starmer a fascist because that's ridiculous. But it comes from the same place. This need to use the machinery of the state in a way that is, again, in conformity with some rationally derived project.
Yeah. And it's totalizing, right? It is totalizing. He says, it's the entire country. It's like, okay, calm down. What if I don't want you to screw with, my business, for example, Keir?
But there's no place for a stand-aside state now, Carl.
Exactly. Apparently. And it's not his fault because he's not that bright, clearly. Just look at that expression. Yeah. Like, the lights don't appear to be on.
No. But the man should be managing a cinema in Swindon.
Yeah, no, literally. We do need a good cinema manager, actually.
No doubt.
Okay. But I'm not happy about this.
Yeah. So, and just as a final thing, he does end the speech by saying that he's going to push the country to the highest sustained growth in the G7. So again, the league table rears its head.
Yeah,
again.
The competitive GDP graph.
Yes. Because that again, for all this talk of community and preservation, handing down to our children, rivers, seas, countryside, this, that, and the other, this is the true face of the Labour Party. Yeah. This is what the actual priorities are.
You can see very much that the Tony Blair advice that he has received is like, no, look, speak in these sort of patriotic, national
almost
terms. Populist terms, But that's a veneer on top of the managerial engine that is running the whole thing. It's very clear that he still thinks this way.
Yeah. Oh, totally right. So I thought we'd move on to just a few reactions to this. Just a few, because I imagine we're running out of time.
We're around it, but it's okay.
But so if we could just have so we've got here Ben Harris-Quinney saying, not only is this government, this Conservative government, the most left-wing in UK history, more tax, more debt, more immigration, more wokery, it isn't just to the left of the last Labour government, it's to the left of the current Labour Party in opposition. Now, I agree with the first half of that, of course, but this is somebody who has been duped, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Because the Labour Party is not to the right of the Conservative Party. As much as they might be presenting themselves as such, their actual policies are just an acceleration of what the Tories are already doing.
Yeah. They as far as they're concerned, essentially what they're saying is it wasn't real Blairism.
Yeah.
It's just no, you've done this wrong. When we're in power, we'll do it right. You know, the mission will still continue.
Yes.
He is right. They're not to the right. No. It's just they've got a very slick presentation.
Yeah, they do. And the next one, John, if you don't mind. Apologies for the language on there, but again, it's the same idea here, being somebody else who's been duped, a right wing Labour Party.
God, I wish.
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
One could only dream. Yeah. And the next one, John. Again, hasn't got a left to speak of right now, which to you and I is just an astonishing thing to say.
Yeah, but that just shows just how far left these people are.
Well, exactly. Again, it reveals the Overton window.
Yeah.
Because these people think that the Conservative Party are enacting policies the BNP campaigned on a few years ago. I mean, come on.
Where?
Yeah.
Where?
Point to the policies.
The BNP were like, yes, we'd like 1 million immigrants in, please. Yeah. No, they weren't.
Classic BNP policy, that. Yeah, I mean, and these next few are essentially the same thing. The illusion of political left and right choice, again, correct, but this is looking at it from the opposite direction, as if the right are in, patriots in control.
Yeah, this is literally looking at it from the most extreme communist position.
Exactly.
So, well, sorry, I wanted utter anarchy.
Yeah. But there we are, neoliberal misleadership of Keir Starmer. Now, I think neoliberal is a better framing than calling him right-wing. I do think the term neoliberal has kind of lost its meaning through overuse.
Sure, but if you are to define it as essentially extreme libertarianism, then Keir Starmer is a managerial libertarian type in that mold. I don't know, libertarian is the wrong word, really, because the Americans are going to pick up on that and say, hang on a second.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. But also because it implies low taxes in a small state. No, but this sort of, it is, an extremely ideologically liberal, total managerial state that Keir Starmer is offering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is in no way right-wing.
No, absolutely not. So I just wanted to finish up here because, as I say, I imagine we're running out of time. Yeah. You're right.
This is exactly how I felt about
pitching Blairism on steroids as the real conservatism, right? Yeah. And that is what's happening. That's what we're seeing. And I just want to finish off with a quote from Peter Hitchens, actually, from The Abolition of Britain, where he says, the 1997 election was a historic choice between two utterly different ideas of Britain, a choice which had little to do with economics or even politics, and everything to do with the far more important issue of what kind of people we are. And that's obviously correct. That's totally right.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that despite sort of ostensibly rerunning the 1997 Labour project, in 2023, this choice that Hitchens is talking about what kind of people we don't have that.
No,
because what we have is we live in the post-revolution era. We have the nominal choice between a right-wing Conservative Party and a left-wing Labour Party. But the reality is these parties are populated by the same type of people, and they all have the same. They might disagree on details, but they have the same fundamental vision of what constitutes good government. And that is this kind of top-down, rationally ordered. It's the things you guys always talk about, the managerial state, the attitude that the only government worth pursuing, the only type of governance worth pursuing, is that which can be recorded on a spreadsheet, that which can be expressed in statistics. Whereas actually people like you and I would recognize that is a seriously anti-human and anti-traditional way of viewing the business of government. And that actually it should be a kind of, the government ultimately should be as Oakeshott would call it, a neutral umpire in the proceedings.
The way I look at it is that essentially the government shouldn't be able to measure in numbers whether they're doing a good job or not.
Yes.
Right?
Because it should be about quality.
Yeah,
not quantity.
Yeah, exactly. It should be that, they walk into their constituency and are the people there happy to see them? Do the people there just look happy in their communities?
Yeah.
Is everyone, are we flourishing in a visual, aesthetic way?
Yes.
And if we're not, then, and we're clearly not at the moment, then it doesn't matter what the numbers say.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter what the GDP is.
Yeah. We see the reign of quantity in all areas, don't we? Yes. And government's no different.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to support our work, you can come on down to the website and sign up and watch videos like Brokenomics number 20, which looks at universal basic income, which is a bad idea in my opinion. And if you want to check out what Dan is doing on Twitter, the person who runs this series, you can check him out at kingbingo_. Thank you very much for watching.